inherit a script, right, when we are born. How we would live, what we are supposed to do, where we are supposed to be. And most of the families, and especially Indian households, what's the kind of script that we are given? You know, get yourself good grades, get yourself a good corporate job, settle in life. And that's how we all are trained to be. I wasn't born with the intent to start a business, and certainly not into the kitchen space that I got into. But I'll tell you a story about myself today on how this happened. So like the good Indian kid, an obedient daughter, I got good grades, got myself a good corporate finance job, and I think the life was on track until I got married. Well, it's not what you're thinking, but actually, the day I entered the kitchen of my house, I realized one thing, standing there all by myself, that while the cook in the home is being celebrated, the space that she works in is actually ignored. The equipment that is given to her is for her to dish out nourishment for the entire family, but her comfort virtually not exists. So that is where that seed to start my own venture began. And I'll tell you more as I move along. So it was not about the kitchen for me anymore. It was more than that, because as I looked deeper into it, and I realized that women may be the best financial advisors at home, best financial planners sitting at home. They may be the best of cooks and caregivers at home. But tell me, how many women out there are actually Michelin star chefs? Or how many of them today are corporate CEOs and CFOs? So that puts my point into place here today, that women may get all that they want at home, but it's more to do not with competence than out there. It's more to do with the mindset. Not just internal mindset, which is for each person, but also in the family, in the society at large. And that was something which was now bothering me, and I could not unsee what I had seen anymore. So I started, of course, with my venture. So like I said, the script was more of, what was given to us in terms of what is right, what is wrong, follow what is safe, how you're expected to do, and here I wanted to change. Now this is the kind of kitchen that probably existed back then in most of the households. Now this is something that I saw in my in-laws' home, not to say that it was restricted only to their home, because probably something similar existed in my family as well, and maybe the neighbors as well. But as they say, you don't realize the pain unless you actually go through one yourself, or you are trained well in empathy. So when I went through this pain, I realized that this is not a space which was dark, dingy, not well lit, not well ventilated. I felt this is not the place I wanted myself to work in. And more so also for the women, because it was more to give the women there the respect, or the person who's using that space, the respect that they deserve. So that was the core idea by which I started my business. But before I share that, what is not expected from a good, obedient daughter, I did actually just the opposite. And I quit my job. I quit my corporate financial career, and I went and told my parents, who were, of course, very upset about it. There was silence in the room. Then there was concern, and then there was ridicule. They were like, are you crazy? Who quits a financial job, a corporate career, to start working with carpenters? You must be mad. They really thought I had lost my mind. But I went on, and I said, this is it, and I would want to do that. So, I realized that it was more to do with barriers internally as a person. One needs to break that mold from within first. And I feel that, it's the safety net we all have been brought up in that actually tells us that getting out is more like, fear, wearing a business suit, rather than logic and reasoning. And once you break that mold, there is the entire world out there for you. So I initially, most of my days, and then, when the journey started, it was actually not months, but years of facing resistance.
not just from family, the extended family probably took forever to understand and realize that I was not helping the family in business. I was the one who was building it brick by brick. It took forever because most of the people that I was spending most of the time was not wearing stilettos, walking in fancy AC corridors, but working with my carpenter teams, trying to set up my venture, trying to set up the factory that I was wanting to build, and more so, trying to work with people and their mindset on, I'm not a woman with a hobby, but somebody who really wants to build a career for myself and for people out there. You know, I have seen times when clients would walk into my studio and they would actually walk past me thinking I'm probably a fancy receptionist or somebody who's maybe out there to just help them make the sale, not understanding that I am the decision maker. They would actually look for the man in the room or the technical guy, so-called, you know, to finally get the inputs. And it was more prevalent when I worked with corporates for bigger corporate orders. They would actually want a man's nod to go ahead and sign the contract. It was crazy because in those times, it was not those fancy startups that you see today. It was not a time of Shark Tanks and LinkedIn's and, you know, founders sharing their stories. So it was actually not cool. It was crazy. And a woman working with machines, working with people, carpenters, shop floor, who would have heard of that? Even today, when I walk into rooms, it's very normal for me to walk into a room where maybe 300 to 500 men, and I'm the only woman who's sitting out there on the panel discussion, talking woodworking and machinery and furniture. But that is who I am, and that's what I built for myself. You know, I'll share one incident which I'm very proud of. I think many, many years ago, I was in Taiwan, and I met a manufacturer, and he told me, oh, you're that woman from India. We've heard about you. And somewhere I felt that maybe the mold has cracked a little. So what happens with all of us when we actually try to tick all the boxes that are given to us that we inherit as a script? We don't realize we probably compartmentalize ourselves into one of those boxes, unless some incident happens which actually breaks one of those boxes and we try and create one of our own. So it's always good to have your own space or your own box and build something for yourself. Having said that, you know, when I started working with clients, initially it was about kitchens, but then I moved on to do the entire turnkey projects. And I realized that I was working more on the mindsets of people. And it was heartening to see that somewhere I was trying to shape their ideas from women taking the back seat in decision making, because at that time, while the woman was the user, she actually had no say in how it was designed. And believe you me, kitchen is the metaphor I'm trying to use here. Because it's not just that, it's about the life. They were not allowed to design their own life, to design their own space, or get that comfort that they so well deserved. And it was nice to work with families and couples where finally, you know, their mindset began to change. And rather than looking and coming and asking me for what is trending, they would come and ask, what works for us? What is the right thing for us to do which brings us comfort, which gives her the space, and she started getting that space to take her own decisions. For me, that was growth. That was breaking the mold that I'm talking about here. So when you actually start understanding and sharing the pain and work with people, empathize with them, empathize what they're going through, and rather than just being in the space, you take charge and be in charge, things do differ and they do matter. So I moved on and I worked with corporates, and that's how they started coming back to me, because they understood that I realized what empathy was all about. And I started working with corporates on working customer experiences, on employee experiences, on working with people where innovation is sparks, you know, and that is what changes. So I would like to tell you that there are three major takeaways that I would share, which is one, of course, discomfort leads to growth. By the way, I would love to show from that kitchen what have I, the kind of work that I began to design. And from there to here, with multiple awards, I today speak at international platforms. I work with teams globally not just in designing, not just in design thinking, because for me, it was not just about the kitchens anymore, as I said. It was more of working with people and their mindsets and helping them get out of their molds, their structures, their inhibitions, and what they felt they could do or not do. So I would just like to leave you with a few key takeaways. One, like I said, discomfort leads to growth. It's absolutely fine if you feel you're in the discomfort space, as far as you hear that inner voice somewhere which tells you that this is not all right. And it's okay to challenge the not all right situation and move on to something which makes you feel more comfortable. It's all right to outgrow your script. You may inherit something, but it does not mean that the way things have happened in the past, that is how they should happen for the rest of your life. So it's all right to challenge what is the status quo. It's all right to outgrow the script that has been given to you. And of course, designing your own life is not selfish. It's in fact very, very big blessing that you can give to yourself and to others around you, because when you start designing your life, you actually give space for others to design theirs. You give them the opportunity and the liberty to think how they want to lead their life. So I would like to leave you all with this final statement that if you're thinking that, if there's anyone here in the room who's wanting to jump off the routine, who wants to start their own new venture, or a professional who's thinking, am I really on the right track? And what if I do something where people have to say something about it? Please don't bother too much, because eventually there are very few people who get the chance to write their own script. And trust me, it's a beautiful feeling to write your own story and narrate it your own way. Thank you very much, and have a good day.